Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ces Butner, and I'm honored to serve as this year's president of Rotary Club of Oakland. Founded in 1908, the Rotary Club of Oakland is the third oldest Rotary Club of some 35,000 Rotary clubs throughout the world. We are a community of 300 men and women from all walks of Oakland civic, commercial, and community life, committed to Rotary motto of service above self. I'd like to welcome you to our 5,333rd club meeting. For over 111 years, we have welcomed Rotarians and guests from around the world to our club meetings. We continue to do so virtually. So if you're a visiting Rotarian, or if you're a guest of a Rotarian, please let us know by typing your name and the name of your club into the chat box located at the center bottom of the screen, as you've indicated by the red arrow on the slide you're viewing now. By doing so, we will be able to recognize you later in this meeting. Also, we recommend that all participants view this Zoom meeting by clicking the speaker view button located in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And if you have comments throughout the meeting or questions for the speaker, please use the chat button at the bottom of the screen for that as well. And now for our thought for the day, Rotarian Zeydi Gutierrez. I'm sorry,
That's okay, Says, no problem. I decided to do the thought of the day on National Women's Month, since we're in March, and it celebrates the historical, cultural, and political achievement of women. The day also supports taking action against gender inequality around the world. We all know the world couldn't run without women. I'm sorry to say that. But I would have to start with my mother. From very humble beginnings at a time when women didn't own businesses and very little education, she ended up owning her own business. So that's the background, not only for myself, but for so many women that we see doing amazing work throughout the world. To me, my mother exemplified perseverance, hard work, integrity, but also opening the doors for those that followed behind. And that's what a lot of women have done for me, especially in Oakland as I embarked into this position. So I went back to look at the Oakland Rotary history, and this is what it says. As the third oldest club in the world, Oakland Rotary has had an impact. As the first club to organize lunch meetings, an early and vocal proponent for the inclusion of women in Rotary, Oakland has launched Rotary traditions that continue today. So to me, it goes exactly back to women helping women, which definitely coincides with service above self. Thank you.
Thank you, Sadie, for setting the tone for this Women's Month thought for the day that you have today. Because we want to remain grounded and focused, we begin our meetings by jointly reciting our vision, which is, together, we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. I hope you enjoyed last week's meeting, where we had one of our largest attendance ever this year, to see Eric Foner give us a little history lesson and explain the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendments. It was very enlightening and generated a lot of chat that produced a recommendation for all of us to watch the six-part TV series Amend. More about that later. We'll talk about that. Also, I named the inaugural co-chairs of our newly formed DEI committee, Celeste Gordon and Greg Knight. They are already organizing and strategizing what we must do to include diversity and inclusion in everything we do. I look forward to their first committee meeting, and if you're interested in serving on that committee, put your name in the chat. We also recognized past President Ginzberg House and his generous gift to ORE that was bequeathed to the club from his trust. it was quite touching for me because Gene, I was quite close to Gene. And I think it's very important. And actually, it's a good segue to today's meeting where we will introduce and recognize our members who have given at various levels last year as we kick off our ORE campaign for this year. Additionally, we'll have a great speaker that I think will spur quite a conversation on her work. So sit back and enjoy another in our great Civic Thursday meetings where you can catch a great speaker and get involved in Rotary where service above self exists. Past District Governor Ed Jellin, do we have any visiting Rotarians or guests?
Indeed, we do, President Ces. Very happy to have with us a past president of the Delta Antioch Rotary Club, who also happens to be the spouse of one of our members. So let's welcome, please, Martha Goralka. And Martha, so nice to have you with us. Welcome anytime.
Thank you, Ed, and welcome, Martha. Glad to have you with us. Past President Sean Marks, I believe you have a special reintroduction of one of our longtime members.
Thank you, President Ces. I sure do. Slideshow, please. Aha, all right. Well, today I have the great honor and pleasure of doing a reintroduction of one of our club's most outstanding members, the 42nd President of the United States of America, no other than Bill John Clinton. John Holmgren was born in Kaiser, Oakland, and grew up in Orinda. He was the only child of his parents, John and Eileen, and loved playing soccer and tennis. John attended Orinda's middle school, now called OIS, and Miramonte High School. John attended Cal, go Cal, and earned a degree in political science. He had visions of working for the State Department, and from Cal, he received his master's degree in international studies from Johns Hopkins at their Washington, D.C. School of Advanced International Studies. After graduation, he took and passed the Foreign Service exam and returned to California to wait for assignment. While he was waiting, he decided to enroll in the MBA program at Cal. Go Cal. While he was at Cal, go Cal. He met his future wife, Elise. Having fallen head over heels for Elise, he declined the State Department offer that came and he finished his MBA. Elise invited John to meet her family in Southern California. Being an only child, he was delighted to be a part of such a large family. Elise had 7 siblings. That was the clincher. At the airport, waiting for their plane ride home, John asked Elise to marry him. They tied the knot in 1981 and wasted no time having 3 kids, Lauren, Sarah, and Annie. They settled in Piedmont and live there still. They also have a home in Sea Ranch, which John still needs to loan me. John and Elise have 2 children, 2 grandchildren, Daniel and Amelia. After finishing his MBA at Cal, go Cal, John went to work for PMI Mortgage Insurance as a financial analyst. At PMI, he learned about trading mortgages, and when PMI decided to relocate to Chicago, John left and joined United Savings Bank to become a mortgage reseller. United Savings Bank got shut down for doing shady commercial loans, John claims to be claimed, and the bank was sold to a company in Hong Kong. After the shakedown, John was made the head of the wholesale loan department, which he did for the next 3 years. In 1989, John founded Holmgren and Associates and grew his Montclair office to 20 employees. John's business has been providing great service and multiple loan options to East Bay families for more than 30 years. I personally have done 4 mortgages through John. Holmgren and Associates was a 20+ year great customer of my business, Get Something Back Workplace Solutions. 6 years ago, he upgraded his offering to customers by joining a mortgage banker and becoming the mortgage banker, Finance of America Mortgage. Past President Don Black introduced John to Oakland Rotary in 1994. He told John that he'd be able to do lots of loans with members, but John fell in love with Rotary because of community service. I first met John right after he joined when I was chair of the Community Youth and Senior Service Committee, then our club's largest committee. He followed my 2-year term as chair, and we both endured and enjoyed the ongoing entertainment of 2 of our committee members, Bill Dunbar and Dick Dukas. At each meeting, they would eventually take opposing sides of an issue and verbally go at it, including personal insults. Definitely a committee chair role that required strong will. John has served on the ORC board and the ORE board, and has also served as president of the ORE board. He has been a part of the Kinder Prep committee for 5 years and is the current chair. He has loved reading in the classroom at Reach Academy each week and was touched deeply one day. He had been doing one-on-one teaching with a boy, Chris, who was significantly behind his class in reading. His older brother came in to pick him up one afternoon, and when Chris introduced John, his older brother said, "Thank you for teaching my brother to read." John's work has truly made a difference. Thank you, John. And here's John.
Thank you, Sean. That was a
We
wonderful
can, let's give John a big round of applause.
Thank you so much. I love being part of this club. It's a fantastic organization. I'd like to ring the bell 10 times in honor of Sean's wonderful presentation.
Very nice. Thank you so much. Anybody who is interested in ringing the bell for John, for all that he has done for us, you can also enter that into the chat. Thank you, Sean, for that introduction. Earlier this week, a letter was mailed to everyone kicking off our 2021 campaign for Oakland Rotary Endowment. It was a letter that had pretty pictures in it, tell you about what we do. In that letter, ORE President Mike Maude and I appealed to everyone on behalf of ORE. But first, I want to take a few moments to explain the difference between ORE and our successful TRF campaign. The easiest way I can explain it, that we had the TRF earlier this year, the easiest way I can explain the difference is TRF, the Rotary Foundation, is international scope and part of a Rotary International umbrella that we're under, organization that we're under. ORE is Rotary Club's #3's endowment that funds our local community service efforts and our club and our operations of our club. Every new member we induct here, I say the same thing to them. In the middle of the introduction, I say you will receive your Rotary pin, and we hope you will wear it with pride and find pleasure and fulfillment by attending meetings and participating in our service activities, practicing service above self, and by contributing to the Rotary Foundation and Oakland Rotary Endowment. This is our time for our campaign for our new year, but before we do that, traditionally, we have a donor appreciation reception before our in-person meetings for all of our Pearl Harris and above donors as a pre-campaign kickoff. This year, I'd like to do something similarly, but virtually. My version of the donor appreciation for 2020 year, run the slides, Jack. This is a list of all the ORE members that have received Paul Harris $1,000 cumulative donations to ORE and above recognition. And as you can see from the list, you can scroll through the pages, Jack. There's about 100 members in the category of 1,000 to 2,500. There's about 40 members in the category 25 to 5,000. About 64 members in the 5,000 to 7,500 measure. 32 members in the 10,000 to 2,500 category, and 4 in the category for 25 to 50,000, 7 in the category for 50 to 100,000, and 6 in the category for 100,000 plus. That's a pretty impressive list, if I do say so myself. Let's give all our previous donors a grand hand and tell them how much we appreciate all that they give to Rotary.
Oh,
I'll go one step further. We always recognize, and I had them up in the pre-meeting slides, the name of those Rotarians that moved to a new level in 2020. Put that slide up for me, Jack. Okay, you got it? This is the slide that shows these members became 2,500 donors in 2020, cumulative donors. This says 2,500, John Colin, Mona Hall, Elizabeth Hillman, Elida Scalia, Gail Uckama, Jane Williams, and Cedric Titus. In the $5,000 category, we had Keith Guerin, Bill Hogan, David Kidner, Mike Mallory, and Pat Williams. In the $7,500 donor level, new to it this year, is John and Pamela Clausen, Tom Love, Joyce E. Mack, Steve Nichols, and Shauna O'Hare. And in the 10,000 donor group, Wise Allen, Steve Blair, and Ruth Stroop. And then we have the $25,000 level. That's a pretty significant, shows that you had a long time of giving in our community. Joe Garaka. Joe, do you have anything to say as to why you give so much to ORE?
I guess I'd actually say, if you give a little bit years over years, it adds up. And so Martha and I support Rotary. We believe in Rotary both locally and internationally. And we feel it makes a difference. And we started out probably 35 years ago making $50 donations. And we make a little bit more now, but if you add it up year after year after year, so I encourage those that haven't to participate. No amount is too small to get started. Martha, you want to say something real quick? Real quick? No? Okay. But thank you.
Well, thank you, Joe. You said the key word. It's a little bit every year. That's all it does, and it's cumulative, where it gets you to those kinds of levels. And also at the $50,000 level, new to it this year, John Holgram, who we just found out it's been a long term memory and got reintroduced. John, what do you say? Why is it that you give so much to ORE?
Well, what I like about giving to ORE is that is the best way that I'm aware of to support Oakland and to support our community. I do support other organizations as well, and schools I've gone to and schools my kids have gone to and everything else. But the lion's share of what I give goes to Rotary because I believe it has the most impact, and the funds that are spent with dedication and thoroughness by our members. So I have more trust in a donation to ORE than pretty much anything else.
Very good. And we have at 100,000 level, this is just unfathomable, but we got one here. It's Fred Morris. Is Fred Morris with us today?
Yes, I am, Seth.
Okay. Why don't you tell us why you give so much to Rotary?
Well, actually, pretty much for the same reason as John Holmgren. We're a voluntary organization, and there is very, very little waste. So at Cerrone, just about all the money goes to good stuff. And that's why I love Rotary so much.
Thank you so much, Fred. I'd like to publicly recognize and thank all our 2020 donors, and of course, invite everyone to join this year's campaign that kicks off next week and culminates in our gala event on May 22nd, 2021. Let's give all those donors an appreciation and a round of applause. Yeah, we can do it virtually. We got a
standing ovation.
We got to have the standing ovation that comes up all the time. I'll be glad when we're able to see you all in person meeting. That's why we're working on it. And as I said last week, given the freedom to do so by Alameda County, we intend to broadcast from the ballroom in May and actually have live meetings in June while continuing the Zoom virtual atmosphere for those that still may want that convenience. I'd like to get some idea around those, if they're ready for in-person meetings and how they will go. So as we go to breakout rooms, think about it and discuss it. We can have about 5 minutes or so in the breakout room. Then we'll come back for the speaker for the day. Let's go to breakout room.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, if we don't want to go to the breakout room, we'll have the speaker
Hey, Sandeep. Yeah, you're muted. You guys,
Peter.
are we, I think it's just us in the here, right?
Yes. Did
Yeah,
you
I had a
want
little,
to join? Did you want
no,
to
no,
join?
no, I wanted to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, I had a little system crash. Are you guys, have you guys decided whether to do any hybrid meetings?
Not yet. Today they're discussing it and let us know.
Okay. I was thinking, one of the things that if we are going to do hybrid meetings, we're going to need a really huge monitor on the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure you guys are thinking about that, but we're going to need a really big monitor. So. I don't think it would feel right to have little computers sitting on each tabletop, little monitors on each tabletop. It'll be
Yeah.
hokey.
Yeah.
Be interesting to know whether or not the California Ballroom is thinking about that. Someone probably ought to talk to the ballroom manager.
Yeah. I think Dudley is taking the lead on that.
Okay. Okay, he wants to have a meeting with me, so it might be that's part of what he wants to talk about.
Yeah.
Oh, Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I came in late. I lost track of everybody. What was the reason for the big screen at the California Ballroom?
Oh, it was just Sandeep and I chatting. Congratulations, Fred, by the way,
Oh, well, thank you.
for all your donations. I know that you're supporting a lot of students. So congratulations.
Yeah, well,
So-
I'm happy to do it. I wouldn't do it if
You
I
are.
didn't have a real full team of people there who are doing more than me, so that's great.
So the reason I asked about the big monitor is it's clear that we're going to be doing hybrid meetings. There will be some people who are going to be on site and want to be in the meeting at the California Ballroom. There are other people that won't. And if we're going to have remote speakers, it's going to be important that the people in the ballroom actually have a good view of the remote speaker.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what we need to be monitored.
absolutely. And that it'll make their if they pay for a gigantic screen, they'll get it back in all the events they have, perhaps too.
Okay, Fred, we're back. I think everybody's back. And it's time for Maude Pervere to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you,
Sure.
President Ces.
Mhm.
Our speaker today is the revered Bay Area documentary filmmaker, Abby Ginzberg. Abby has devoted the last more than 30 years of her career to making films about race and social justice. She is tireless in her pursuit of new topics to shine light on and courageous leaders to honor with her filmmaking. Today, Abby will speak to us about Waging Change, a film she made in 2019 and has added to over this past year. Waging Change is about the One Fair Wage movement led mostly by poor women to get for tipped workers the same federal minimum wage as other workers, rather than the shockingly low $2.13 an hour that is required now. Abby will talk not only about what happened before the pandemic, but what's happened since. The film will be available to individuals very shortly. If you'd like a link when it's out, put your name in the chat and we'll get it to you. You'd also like to see in the chat a link to a CNBC piece from Monday that lays out why the American custom of tipping is a serious problem for many. And by the way, Abby's very newest film is now out. It will have great appeal to our group since it features our Congresswoman. It's entitled Truth to Power, Barbara Lee Speaks for Me. Abby, it's so great to have you here. Thanks for coming. I
And
can
thank
give
you
you
so
Abby
much, Maude,
Ginzberg.
for having me. I'm delighted. I just had a nice time in your breakout room with some people I didn't know or got to meet.
Good.
You can see the poster for the Barbara Lee film. I'm going to do my 2-second promo for that first. That is playing this weekend at the Sonoma International Film Festival. So literally you would Google Sonoma Film Festival, it'll come up. It plays, virtually throughout the entire weekend, and you could watch it at any time. And I would urge you to do it. You will learn something about Barbara Lee. I learned a lot in the process of making the film, and I only love her more for having spent the time with her that I did. So I say, go Barbara Lee. Okay, waging change and how I both came to make this film and what I think its relevance is to us living in California. What happened for me is the following. I went to something that would be like a Rotary lunch, and I heard a woman named Saru Jayaraman speak. She at the time was the head of something called the Restaurant Opportunities Centers. And she was talking about the tip minimum wage, which then and now is still $2.13 in 17 states and barely more than that in many other states. And I just about fell off my chair. So I'm listening to her talk about this, and I'm having the reaction that filmmakers sometimes have when they realize maybe this could be the subject of their next film. Your hands sweat, your heart starts to race, and you just realize, oh my God, if I don't know this is the fact throughout the United States, how many other millions of people don't know it? Because I think of myself as relatively well educated, and I care about labor issues. I used to work for the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. I've been on a worker advocate my entire professional life. And suddenly I am hearing about workers being paid $2.13 in the United States, not in some other country. And I flip out. Okay, so that meant that I had to educate myself as well as others about, and this is what led to the film, how did we get here? Where are we? And how are we going to get out of this? But I think it's important to say that California is not a 213 state. I think it's really important for you to start listening to this, understanding that we are actually the role model for what can be done correctly. Because we force restaurant owners and everybody else in the state to be paid full minimum wage with tips on top. So when I talk about a 213 state, it is not California. It is most of the South. It is a number of other states like Nebraska, but it is not California. Okay, so how this came about is there has, been a federal minimum wage. We all know there's a minimum wage. And again, in a lot of the country, the federal minimum wage is $7.25. And we all know you could not live in Oakland, you could not live in Antioch, you could not live anywhere in the Bay Area making $7.25, and you barely can live in the Bay Area making $16 an hour, which is the regular minimum wage in San Francisco. But in much of the country, where we are today is that restaurant workers who are considered tipped workers, they make $2.13 an hour. And let's say that the minimum wage in their state, whatever it is, North Carolina, South Carolina, Delaware, wherever, is $7.25. What that means is that for every hour that they work, they have to take $5.12 from their tip pool and add it to their wage pool. So imagine that you are a restaurant worker and you have, say, 3 tables in the course of an hour. And suppose you even get $30 in tips in the course of that hour. $15 of every hour you have to take $5 from your tips and put it into kind of the wage bill. That is sort of staggering when you think about it. And I don't know if I can really ask these questions, but I want to ask the question of, how many of you travel? Back pre-pandemic days, most of us traveled to other states. Many of us have had a great weekend in New Orleans. We were not asking ourselves when we were eating that great New Orleans food, how much are these workers getting paid? Well, the reality is that a worker in New Orleans makes $2.13 an hour, even though that same worker in California is making somewhere between $12 and $16 an hour. Okay, so you're doing the same job, you're dealing with the same restaurant clientele, and you are making, less than a third of the same wage. So that's bad. That just put that in, understand that. And what is expected? So then the next level is that if you don't make enough money to bring yourself up to 725, let's use our New Orleans example. If you somehow it's a slow night or you're working during the day or you're not getting enough tips, whatever, and you don't make the 725 an hour, the employer is supposed to make up the difference. Okay, well, that doesn't really happen. So what we have learned, and what I learned in the course of putting the film together, is that it is considered wage theft when an employer does not make up the difference between the 213 that they have to pay and the 725 if you have not made 725 an hour. However, workers don't even know that that is considered wage theft. They have to think twice or three times before they're going to make a complaint to an employer who may fire them from being upset that they're not making up the difference. And more often than not, it doesn't happen. There are no claims filed. And what the Department of Labor said, certainly under the Obama administration, where there was some effort to try to see what could be done about this, what the Department of Labor said is, forget it. We do not have the staff, we do not have the means, and we realize that the restaurant industry is most subject to wage theft of almost anybody in the country, of any industry in the country, but we don't have the ability to do the investigations unless it's in a big chain restaurant. So wage theft exists as something that should be dealt with legally. It isn't. So workers are in a really bad position. Before the pandemic, we had about 13 million people that worked in the restaurant industry. It was at that time the fastest growing sector of the economy and the second largest private sector employer in the country. And it accounted for about 10% of the entire workforce. Since the pandemic, close to 6 million restaurant workers have lost their jobs, and over 100,000 restaurants have permanently closed. So we are at a kind of tipping point around how is the restaurant industry going to come back and how are people going to be paid in the post-pandemic world? And there are some questions that I will sort of address in just a couple of minutes. But I want to answer the question that I think comes up, which is, how can one of the fastest growing and most profitable industries in America pay the lowest wages? Okay, because the tip minimum wage literally applies mostly to restaurant workers and to the people who push you in wheelchairs in an airport, and nail salon workers and parking attendants. But the largest number of all those people are people who serve you as either a bartender or a server in a restaurant. How did that happen? It is the result of a very strong employer lobby called the National Restaurant Association, or as the organizations that are fighting this call it, the other NRA. The National Restaurant Association, which has been in existence for well over 100 years, is extremely influential and was able back in 1991 to cut a deal in Congress, which went the following way. If you promise not to raise the tip minimum wage for restaurant workers, we will support a graduated increase in the minimum wage for everybody else. And that deal literally was struck by Congress in 1991, and it has remained there. So the minimum wage, it's hard to remember that in 1991, the minimum wage was like $4.25, and we've gone, in that many years, we've gone up to $7.25. But what happened was the tip minimum wage of $2.13 was frozen. Okay, that's a long time ago, 1991 to 2021. Okay, long time. So we have not seen an increase in the federal required tip minimum wage since 1991 because of the deal that the NRA cut with Congress. So one needs to sort of take into account, we've got individual restaurant workers in restaurants all over this country. Most restaurants are not the chain restaurants that are represented well by the NRA. So the IHOPs, the Denny's, the Olive Gardens, and the Applebee's, they make up the bulk of the NRA, but really you have a lot of independent restaurants all over this country, that are struggling and that, are helped by only having to pay $2.13. But we have that as a result. We then have millions of workers who are not making enough money to live. So that is kind of where my film comes in. Okay, so I am going, okay, so in California, let me say something about California. In California, as I said, restaurants have got to pay the full minimum wage plus tips. And the other states that this is true of, there are only 7 states at this point in the United States that have the California model. And it is California, Oregon, Washington, Montana, Minnesota, Alaska, and Nevada. Okay, so it's all Western states, certainly no Southern states. And these are the states that require that the restaurant owners pay the full minimum wage plus tips. So we have kind of an inherent, like an experiment going on, where we are able to say, well, what's happened to the restaurant industry? And is it true what the NRA says, which is, you know, you will put all of us out of business if you increase the minimum wage? And the answer to that is no. In fact, in California, we have the highest growth, and well, within the, let me say this, it's not just California, it's all these states, the 7 states put together. There is better tipping, higher growth and sort of survival of restaurants in the restaurant industry, and in general, a small business environment that has been very positive and much better than what we have seen in the 213 states. So California is kind of offering, California and the other 6 states are offering a kind of natural experiment in whether or not these claims that if you force people to pay the full minimum wage, businesses will close all around you. That does not seem to be the case. So that is an important kind of reality for people to know about. And in California, I mean, the minimum wage for the state is $14 an hour for employers with 26 or more employees, and $13 an hour for those with less than 26 employees. And it'll get to $15 for all employees in the state of California by 2023. In San Francisco, the regular minimum wage is $16.07, and in Oakland, it's $14.36. Those are high numbers when you look around the country. I mean, we are really leading the way on having, you know, trying to provide something that resembles a living wage for people, but we know that it costs more than that per hour to live in with a family of 4 in the Bay Area. So that's just a reality that we're all trying to cope with. So then there's the question of where did the tip minimum wage come from? And it is, just without doubt, it is a legacy of slavery. And what happened was that in the post-emancipation period, restaurant owners who did hire newly freed Black people to work in their restaurants were not obligated to pay them a wage. And so the first restaurant workers were paid $0 in 1863 to 1860 whatever, and we have gone up from $0 to $2.13 in 150 years. So we want to think about how that looks. One other thing, okay, so as I say, it's a legacy of slavery, and it is time to end this legacy of slavery, you know, according to all the workers that I spoke to, and certainly the people who are organizing to get beyond where we are now. Almost all, in fact, every server and bartender that I interviewed for this movie, and there are many of them that are in the film, and there are others that are not in the film that I interviewed, people love being servers and bartenders. They like being in the hospitality industry. They are in it not because it was their first job. They're in it many, many years later because they actually really like the work. What they hate is how they get paid. And what many women hate is the amount of sexual harassment that they face on the job. So we've got issues of pay, and then we have issues of how does sexual harassment fit into this whole thing. And it is embedded in the experience for female servers. Because, so we're back to a situation where you have to think about, if I am dependent on my customer to give me essentially my wage, then I have to think twice before I am going to resist some form of sexual harassment that may imperil whether or not I get a good enough tip so that I can actually make enough money to feed my family. And I started this film before the Me Too movement. So at the point where I started this, I would say sexual harassment in the restaurant industry was well known by everybody who knew anything about the industry, but it was not well known by the restaurant going public. And I think among the shocking things that came out following the Me Too movement was how many restaurant owners, not just customers, but owners and managers, were subjecting their women workers to outrageous forms of sexual harassment. One of the other things that we know is that for many women, this is their first job. So what they are learning is not only how to be a waitress or a bartender, what they're learning is how to expect and sort of deal with sexual harassment on the job. And what they are being taught is do not resist, because if you kind of call out one of your customers, you can end up with no tips. You can end up with the management being mad at you. And if you call out a manager, the chances are really good that you're just going to lose your job. So there is a level of silence that has pervaded the industry. And what the Me Too movement did is it supported these women to finally start to speak out. And many very well-known chefs, there's John Besh in New Orleans and Mario Batali in New York and others in Oakland. Many restaurant owners were actually forced to either close their restaurants, sell their restaurants to the employees, but they had to get out of the business because the heat was on from the impact that the Me Too movement had on their reputations. And so I would say in general that the Me Too movement has had a very positive effect on kind of empowering women restaurant workers to speak out against harassment. But then the pandemic happened, and we are now in a reversal of that, because what has happened since the pandemic is even more outrageous. What's happened since the pandemic, so first a bunch of people get laid off, then they get called back to work. And if anybody has been out to eat, even in an outdoor restaurant in the last few weeks, restaurant workers are absolutely wearing masks. And we, the customers, are supposed to be wearing masks. Some do, some don't, some remember, some don't remember. But what women restaurant workers have been reporting since there has been the mask requirement for eating out is that the sexual harassment has intensified and gotten much worse. And so a study was recently done by One Fair Wage, which is the organization that represents these workers, and they surveyed 2,000 women restaurant workers, and everybody said that the sexual harassment has gotten worse with the pandemic. So I'm going to just read a couple of these phrases. I've had customers ask me to take off my mask so they can see my pretty face. One said, pull down that mask so I can see if I want to take you home later. One man said he would tip me better if I did not have the mask on. And another guy said he would like to see me in just the mask. Okay, so you've just been called back to work. You are dealing with the fact that if restaurant customers do not have their masks on, you are potentially being exposed to COVID because not everybody's vaccinated and you don't know if somebody's vaccinated. And your tips now depend on dealing with people who are essentially harassing you around the fact that you're wearing a mask for safety reasons, and all they want to do is, see you naked with your mask on. So that is something to be very conscious of, and I'm going to give a sort of customer tip here. If you go out to eat, particularly in the next few months, please remember that when a restaurant server comes anywhere near your table, you have got to put your mask back on, because they are at work, they are, experiencing the possibility of exposure to COVID, and they cannot be in the position of having to enforce the mask rules on us. We need to remember. So I have, I really have been I keep my mask right down here, put it around my neck and then just pull it up every time the server comes over. So please, honor your servers and respect what you've just learned here today about not exposing them, and put your mask on without having them have to tell you. Okay, so I want to say just one. I don't know. Do I have to stop? I could go on forever, and I want to take questions.
You go on as long as you want.
Okay, let me make a couple of other just key points, because this is this is the stuff that I found so outrageous. The pandemic hit, and what happened to everybody who tried to get on unemployment? Millions of restaurant workers were unable to access unemployment because they were told that their wages were too low. So on the one hand, we don't pay anybody anything. And on the other, we penalize them for not making enough money. So in the 213 states, most restaurant workers were unable to access unemployment because the amount of money that their employer reported to the Employment Development Department really was too little to qualify. So it was a double whammy. One of the things that One Fair Wage did as an organization is they raised, and I was, you're a fundraising organization, they raised $20 million from foundations, from companies, from all kinds of different places. $20 million sounds like a lot of money. There were so many thousands of people who were restaurant workers who applied to get a $500 one-time payment who couldn't. So they were able to spend $20 million and give 40,000 workers $500. And there were still thousands of people who were unable to get any money off of that donation system. So that is like pathetic. And I think it's like why I really feel like it is so important for people to understand why we need a living wage. If the pandemic revealed anything, it is that, we don't even know how vulnerable we are as workers, as an economy, as a country. And we've learned a little bit about that. And we've also learned how interdependent we are. I mean, even if we're protecting ourselves from COVID or we're being careful or whatever, it's like what we learned through this pandemic, what we're allowed to do depends on how our whole community is doing. So in Alameda County, it really didn't matter what I was doing. It mattered how everybody was doing. And, when our numbers went up, we were locked down. When our numbers start to look good, we're allowed a little bit more flexibility. But this notion that we are interdependent and that we have got to do everything we can to kind of take care of our neighbors, that I think is a lesson that we learned during this pandemic. And I am hoping that we will kind of continue to, follow the lessons of that. That it's not that we are our brother's keepers, it's just that we're all in it together. And if we are in the course of a pandemic, then we need to figure out how to help each other. And what I would say about that is that is a reason why we in California need to care about what is happening around the Raise the Wage Act in Congress. You probably have heard that Congress was considering including an increase in the minimum wage for the country as part of the COVID-19 relief bill. What happened with that was there were a number of Democratic senators from places like, Democratic places, Delaware, New Hampshire, one of the senators from Arizona and West Virginia, Manchin in West Virginia, all opposed putting it in as part of the COVID relief bill. So there will be a time between now and the end of this congressional session when the Raise the Wage Act, which has passed the House, is going to be considered by the Senate. And it is important, now that you've just learned everything I've taught you about minimum wage and how important it is to raise it for everybody, that we try to get some federal legislation to end the tipped minimum wage of $2.13 an hour and to raise the minimum wage over time, not by next year, but over time to $15 an hour all across the country. And I think what we in California can do is think about who do we know who lives in Delaware, Arizona, New Hampshire, or Maine, where Angus King is not in favor of this, and see where it takes us. But I feel like we have a job, to do in terms of getting the word out about this. And so, in a word, that's why I made the film. That's why I'm delighted to share some of the findings that went into making the film with you all. I am happy to be able to report, I just learned this morning, that I don't know when the film is going to be exactly available to be streamed, but soon it's going to be up on iTunes and Google Play and so on. In the meantime, on May 4th, public television, not Channel 9, it's called Channel 190 here, it's called the World Station, is going to play it. So May 4th, I think at 4 p.m. our time, because it's 7 p.m. East Coast time, it's either at 4 or at 7, I don't know yet, it will be showing the film. So the film is going to be available, both for you to watch as streaming in your own home, but also on television in the next month. And I feel like there are a million things going on in the chat that somebody else is hopefully monitoring, and I am here.
We will monitor it. Thank you so much, Abby. It was amazing, amazing talk you gave to us today. Do we have any questions from the chat room, Susie? I think Susie is what.
Yes, we have a lot of comments, but I don't see any questions.
We don't have questions now.
Okay, I see. Says which station again? Write down 190. The world station in the Bay Area is 190. So write that down.
And that's May the 4th.
May the 4th, either at 4 or at 7, because I don't know. It's at 7 on the East Coast, and I don't know how that plays for us. Probably 7 our time.
Yeah.
And we will send out for everybody, who indicates that they want to get a follow-up email. We will send out a notice as soon as it's available for streaming. Somebody says, ring the bell for Abby.
Yeah,
I like that.
we're ringing the bell for you. I see a lot of people doing that.
Guys, I
Thank you, Abby.
appreciate it. So there are a couple of other things that maybe I should, so one thing as I say, I want you to do is I want you to sort of pay attention to the news about this Raise the Wage Act. The other thing is there is more information on the film's website. So let me just tell you what it is, because it's easy. It's www.wagingchange.com. So that's easy. That you can find that, and you can sign up for our newsletter, and that'll guarantee that you'll hear, about more showings of the film. And the last thing I want to say, just because I have done films about people that, maybe or stories you care about or whatever, I'm going to spend 1 second telling you about some of the work I've done that you can find that is available for streaming right now on my website. So that website is.
Why don't we post your?
All right, but let me just say something, because we are in this moment of concern about the Asian American community, and I know people, I'm sure at the Rotary are as concerned as I am. I have a film that the film I did sort of before these last two was a film about the Japanese American incarceration, and it links to the Muslim travel ban. But I think it's a short film; it's only 50 minutes. And I think for people who, I don't know, who are interested in it or have never heard of this film, it's a film that uses beautiful Dorothea Lange photographs, some of which you probably have never seen, looking as good as they do in this film, to demonstrate what it was like when Japanese Americans were rounded up and about to be sent to incarceration camps. And so I feel like it's, it's both artistic, but it's also makes the point that we never should have done this.
It's right at the right time.
So yeah, so this is a film called And Then They Came for Us. It's available. Somebody should put my website in the chat. www.social.
We will get that in the chat, and we'll also have Jesse send that out to everybody.
Okay, but I'll type it in the chat. Okay.
So wonderful to have you as our speaker today. This year, our club is making the homeless crisis in Oakland a priority. To that end, and as our gift to you for being our speaker for today, in your honor, we're making a donation to support our unhoused residents in Oakland.
Well, that's fabulous. Thank you for that. Let me say that that's in my Barbara Lee film.
All right.
We have Barbara talking about, how outrageous the situation is around housing and homelessness. So I care a lot about that. So I'm honored to have a donation made in my name to this. Thank you.
Thank you. And additionally, we would like to give you our Centennial book, which documents 100 years of service and friendship in the third oldest club in the Rotary world. Again, thank you, Abby, for being our speaker for today. And Rotaract member Devontae Brooks, will you tell us about our speaker for our next Civic Thursday meeting?
Yes, thank you, President Ces. Hello, everyone. Devontae Brooks here, representing the Oakland Community Rotaract. I am serving as president, and just to give you a heads up, for next week, we'll be having Tim Hahn from the Illuminaries crew. He is a local muralist who paints in the community, paints globally, and he does have a mural that's actually not that far from the ballroom. It's the Oakland Athletic Stomper the Oakland is Proud mural. You've probably seen it on the brick building. So we'll be having him do a little bit of telling how art works in the community and how it impacts. Thank you, President Zess.
Thank you. Thank you, Devontae, for that tease, and we look forward to Rotary joining us in the meeting next week. Thank you, Zeydi, for the thought for the day. Thank you, Sean, for reintroducing John Holmgren. And thank you, Bard, for introducing our speaker. And a big thank you for Abby Ginzberg for a wonderful, wonderful speech that we had today. Remember, the next month, April, is ORE campaign month. Jesse, before I wrap up this meeting, do we have more bell ringers?
16 members rang the bell, President Sess.
16.
Jack McAvoy rang the bell.
Does that include the 1,000 that John Holmgren put in? So add that in and it's 2,600.
There we go. We can do that. Jack McAvoy rang the bell for John. The Bosnickers rang the bell for John. John rang the bell for Sean's presentation. Sadie rang the bell twice for John. Sean Marks rang the bell. Fred Morse rang the bell. Mary Rugster rang the bell for John. Joyce Mack rang the bell for John. John Clausen rang the bell for John. Keith Urete rang the bell for Abby. You rang the bell for John. Lou Regali rang the bell for Abby. Sadie rang the bell for Abby. Carrie Hamill rang the bell for Abby. Janice Brickley rang the bell for Abby. And Aleda Scola rang the bell for Abby.
Wow, that's
Thank
amazing.
you all for ringing the bell for me. That's a first.
They're ringing the bell for our speaker today. $100 gift to the ORE. That's
Thank
a wonderful, wonderful tribute to our speaker for today.
And Maud just rang the bell for Abby. So a few more.
All right.
I'll check the chat because I may have missed something.
3,900.
All right. So I'd like to end this meeting as we always do. And that's the way it went at the 5,333rd Club meeting on March 25th, 2021 at Oakland Rotary number 3, the third oldest Rotary Club in the world. And so now this meeting of the Rotary Club of Oakland is adjourned. Thank you all. It's a great meeting. Abby, we could have listened to you for another 30 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
We just didn't have time. I was trying to catch the time to get it back for us doing everything right. But I'm sorry about that, but you were wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to, thank you to Maude for introducing me to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have worked in that have been a waitress or a waiter.
I
So
agree.
they had no questions because it's like, I feel that pain.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Abby. You were great.
Well, thank you for, as I say, thank you for having me. It was, I actually didn't really understand sort of what the time was. I mean, I was, I think I understood it literally, you get 20 minutes and that's it.
Next time I should get you on earlier.
Okay, I think so.
So Miss Abby, so where'd you get the poster, Truth to Power?
I made it. What do you mean, where'd I get it? I created it.
Oh, you created